trembling in disbelief. The real thing, and watch out for those water buffalo sandals.
All made news this very week in decades past right here on Rochester's first television station. Here's News 8 Now's Dave McKinley with News 8 Then.
10 years ago this week, as America still reeled from the Oklahoma City Federal Building bombing the week before and the realization a native Western New Yorker, Timothy McVeigh, perpetrated it, a California forestry minister was killed in what would turn out to be the last of 15 bombings carried out over 17 years by the elusive Unabomber, still unknown to us at the time as Ted Kaczynski. LASIK eye surgery was still a relatively new thing, as was Take Your Daughter to Work Day, and both Ginger Rogers and Howard Cosell died this week in 1995, 20 years ago this week.
I don't think they can improve it any. I think it's good the way it is now.
Nonetheless, for the first time in a century, Coca-Cola changed its formula, and this week in 1985, as the first batches of new Coke were being mixed at Rochester's Coca-Cola bottling, we also learned its formula would be as closely guarded a secret as the old one had been.
If you did know it and I had $10,000, would you tell me?
Probably not.
30 years ago this week.
RIT hosted Buffalo State today in a Frisbee match, a sport that has become an official varsity sport.
Well, it was the 70s. Still, it wasn't all fun and games. There were some serious concerns.
The United States Consumer Product Safety Commission has discovered that sandals made from the hides of water buffaloes may cause a skin rash.
40 years ago this week, when the United Way was still called Community Chest, it kicked off its annual campaign with a grand parade downtown, led by the Jefferson High School Marching Band, with a host of member agencies, many of which are still in existence today, in tow. Rochester visitors included one Robert Weaver, then a federal housing administrator. A year after this Channel 8 interview, he would have the distinction of becoming the first African-American in history to hold a cabinet post when President Johnson named him secretary of the newly created Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Oh, and we're happy to report just as now, albeit a bit later in the spring, in those times, baseball was back. And here's the way it used to look in Rochester at Silver Stadium on Norton Street, the way I'm sure many of you might remember from the days of News 8 Then.